Are you a leader in customer success, pre-sales, professional services, support? Do you work behind the scenes and roll up your sleeves to make sure that customers are happy? Renew. Then this is for you. Welcome to the GSD Podcast. Welcome to the GSD Podcast. Getting it done. Services, success, and software. We'll talk with the pros that have been in the trenches, getting service teams off the ground, launching new types of groups to service customers, or running agencies that don't have a product attached to it. For the pros, by the pros. This is the GSD Podcast, and this is your host, Jeff Kushmerek.
Hey there, it's Jeff. Thanks for clicking play on the podcast. Always appreciate it. Wanted to chat quickly about Brad, who's the guest on the podcast. As I say in the podcast, I'm super psyched because Brad reached out to me and I saw that his title was VP of Implementation, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's Neo, it's the chosen one." Finally, I've seen that as a title, and so I was super excited. Brad's super well spoken, very smart, gonna go lots of places, I'm sure. And he came from a Big Four background, and then took a role with Indeavor, which does some pretty complicated human resource management and workforce management software. So his team is behind that, and he's just really approached things in all the right way. He reached out to me, and we get together every once in a while and chat over some of the best practices and everything. And to be honest, he's given me some ideas for some of my blog posts because I was like, "Oh, that's a good blog post. Let me write that up." So definitely huge credits for that. A quick thing, I got a bunch of podcasts lined up. I actually have been bad on the production side of things. We're getting them actually released and put in the picture and all that little stuff. So carve some time over the holidays and try and get these out over once a week or as quick as I get them in. And I would not say that except for the last two people I've talked to found the podcast, and they had found it via LinkedIn and things like that. So I don't want to sound like Joe Rogan or anybody like that, but if you do have the chance to go into iTunes and give a review, even if you think I'm, full of what, that would be great. And the only reason why I say that in this podcast is I would love to reach out to more people like Brad. And if they're in iTunes or podcast app and they're searching for professional services or implementation or things like that, that this comes up. And I know that they use reviews to feed the search results. I think, as I've mentioned a couple times before, I'll never monetize this podcast. It's truly a labor of love and by the people for the people, but would love to keep getting out to more and more people, doing really well in that regards, and just want to keep that train up. So hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I'll be back in a little bit with another one. And we are recording.
Fantastic.
And so people who've listened to the last couple of podcasts or so, I've got the "It's Funny" tally going for my transitional statement. So we don't need to put those snarky comments on the LinkedIn post. I understand. I say that a lot. So the interesting point, though, is that when I brought it up to Brad, I just had to stop myself right there.
There you go. Yeah.
Brad said he uses that term a lot as well. So we have these thoughts in our heads about how we go about our work, and then we hear somebody agree with us, and we're like, "That's kind of funny." So Brad, introduce yourself. We've known each other. Is it this year? Actually, it's an interesting thing because you're not in my direct network of people that I've worked with, which is awesome because I just like hearing from other people. And I think you reached out to me, right? You just suddenly, somebody might forward you. How did that all happen?
So I was a listener of the podcast. So I've listened to many GSD podcasts while
I feel
on
so
runs.
sorry. So
Yeah,
sorry.
no, well on runs, and I'll say it's an interesting dynamic, right? Because this is the work I do. I kind of sought this forum out as kind of a for the people, by the people type communication
100%.
mode, right?
And
And what's interesting is I almost primarily listen to podcasts either in the car or on a run. Neither of which are great places to like take notes, but this is, when you talk with people or when you listen to podcasts like this, you kind of have to. So many runs, listening to you, as well as kind of many stops, taking some notes on my cell phone. But yeah, in my new role, which I say new, it's been 6 months, which feels more like 6 years. I just a lot of the topics that I listened to with you and your network very much resonated. So reached out. You were very gracious, and we've kind of maintained this back and forth for a few months now.
That's awesome. When I started the podcast, you were the core listener, right? Which I had to think about, because it got me through a lot of imposter syndrome a while. Because I'm like, some of the people I've talked to, like Andrew Fang and like Scott Roth, like, you guys, they're better than I am. They'd be like, why are you interviewing me? Like, so I was going through this thing where like, oh, here's Kushmarek with another one of his war stories again. Yeah. But the idea was that, listen, it's total, as I say, like blue collar, like when my dad's a plumber, like total blue collar, like talking shop. Right. We don't really do the autobiographical, like, then I did this and there's this thing that I did, unless it really helps out the conversation. But it's part therapy, part like, how did you fix this problem? Like, this is evolving. And unlike customer success and some other things that are out there, there's not a massive community around this and everything.
There's not.
So, but my hope is to find more people like you and get them on and talking and get outside my network. So, I don't make a dime off it. I'm not ever going to put an ad placement in or pimp a product or anything like that. It's truly just to find more people like us, because we're a little underrepresented. It used to be professional services, but now it's kind of, this is a great segue into what you're doing. Now it's splintered off over the last few years into professional services being implementation for a lot of SaaS companies. And so when you reached out, trying not to use the inappropriate terms here, but I was like, he's the one, he's the first one. Here's Neo. he's the first one where it's been recognized as you are a functional leader of implementation, not like, oh, we have this implementation component over here and we're going to give it to some manager. Like, you are leading a functional group called implementation. So give us how you got there and what you're doing now, and then we can get a bunch of things we can get into after that.
Yeah, absolutely. So how I got there was through most recently kind of the formal professional services route. So involved in consulting for one of the big four. Spent a lot of time kind of learning some of the ins and outs and in the procedures, both of within our industry and the specific verticals that I serve now at Indeavor, but also from kind of a ways of working perspective. Prior to consulting, I did spend some time in manufacturing and a major automotive OEM, and all of those kind of transitioned to a point where I was looking for an opportunity, and an organic opportunity primarily for growth specifically within SaaS and with the growth company. Fortunately, the role itself, as well as the relationships that kind of I had made throughout the previously worked out with Indeavor. I'll tell you a little bit more about Indeavor, but about the role itself, I can't take any credit for the role. I have to give the entire role and the entire credit to my boss, our CEO, Brandon Shores. First of all, kind of unbelievable from an operational perspective, a vision perspective, but a very unique kind of combination of the fact that he's essentially grown up in this company.
Oh, okay.
But also has the vision required to take us where we need to be, right? So he knows what our customer needs at the granular level. He knows what our organization needs at the granular level. And he presented this position to me as VP of implementation. And I had kind of the same feedback, right? So what exactly is this? What's the engagement? And basically the way we look at it, the way he looks at it now, and the way that I kind of now drive and mold and shape the rest of the organization is, look, we serve a highly complex environment that requires deep adoption at the process level. And as a point solution, we need to seamlessly integrate and be adopted by a broader ecosystem of applications as well.
Yeah.
So, it's in order to do that, certainly you need the technical nature, and we have a fantastic product that's maturing daily, right? And then, but certainly the functional nature as well. And how do we meld those two?
Mm-hmm.
It's specific and paramount focus on implementation. And so all credit to the boss. It was a new role when it was when I joined.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was all him.
That's amazing. And that was one of my questions. I was like, was it your idea? Like, yeah, I'll take that gig, but it's going to be the VP of implementation. Like, that's awesome.
No,
So,
it was, yeah. And it was, and so, I mean, I think that what's important though is, okay, so where do we go from here, right? And I don't know, we don't know what that looks like. We talk about what that looks like, but certainly we need to make sure that implementation is considered in the broader customer journey, and it fits in well, not everything, both from leads to pre-sales to the actual implementation and then beyond. But securing that kind of robust foundation is critical first. And I don't want to give I don't want to discredit, the fantastic team that I have for me, right? We're doing some fantastic services work, right?
Yeah.
We're doing some great consultative work, but the core of our function is to be the plumbing from that sales to our success team, and get people up to speed and highly configured and provide value quickly.
100%. And I know, so we talk, every few weeks and everything. And so yeah. I know that you're always crediting the team and all that stuff. Do me a quick favor for the people who don't know Indeavor, SaaS, B2B, like what's your current, like you get called in to do an implementation. What is your standard customer usually look like?
SaaS B2B, we serve three primary markets, manufacturing, and within manufacturing, food processing is really kind of our major growth engine right now, but we serve both discrete and process manufacturing, and that's kind of our biggest customer base. We also serve government and energy and utilities. So what we are a workforce management solution that provides essentially labor optimization, visibility, and employee engagement for complex enterprises. So if you are a shift-based organization with highly paid individuals and complex rules, i.e. unions or fatigue rules, whatever it might be, we provide you the information, the visibility, and ultimately kind of the optimization and employee engagement, while integrating with your broader workforce management application ecosystem. So, not only will you be able to, identify and optimize your labor pool, but you'll also have that streamlined within, your broader systems that make up that workforce management area. So, that's what we do. And, ultimately, our customers specifically, what my team and our team is focusing on is, specific, especially in the manufacturing world, specific facilities, specific, enterprise, folks that providing both value at the global level, the regional level, and then the local level at the factory and employee level, to those areas.
That's great. It's super important. I can empathize with you in some areas because one of my customers is HCM solution, and a lot of these factor in. So when I hear like unions and California laws and all that stuff, I just know it gets complex, and it's nice to be working on important stuff, right? Like sometimes when my friends are looking around, they're talking about, I'm interviewing here or there. I'm like, go with the one that saves people money and that becomes a valuable part of the company and how they run.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the great part about a company and a solution like Indeavor is, we're serving both needs. We're serving the business needs and the enterprise needs, and that's obviously who many cases is writing the check, but we're genuinely improving the employee experience as well, right? So we have that impact at all levels. What that does for us from a business perspective is it makes us sticky, which we very much like. And but it also presents a challenge. Going back to implementation is, how do you serve the needs of both a customer who is an employee, but also the needs of a CTO or
We typically call this the B2B2C problem, right? Like you're selling B2B, but then you're essentially turning it into a consumer play with their end users after that.
Yep,
right?
absolutely, absolutely.
So listen, one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I just tossed it into the agenda because I remembered when you first started, you were coming from Big Four, and it was a kind of a big switch for you to go from Big Four to the startup world and then implementing what I call a minimum viable process and things like that.
Yeah.
Want to get into that a little bit and sort of how that's been going along over the last few months?
Yeah, you'd get an answer, different answer from me, and you'd get a different answer than you would from my wife right now, I'd say probably. But it's been awesome.
You only kick the dog once a day now? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's been fantastic. So first and foremost, it's what I was seeking. And in fact, before joining the consulting route, I really did join it with the idea that, hey, I want to be ultimately, grow the skills, build the skills, the diverse kind of, vertical experience to be able to provide value in kind of a growth company. So from that perspective, I'm a bit of a glutton for punishment that I've always been seeking this out. Now, the difference is for those of the people who are listening or who will listen or know me, between Big Four and the startup couldn't be more different, right? First and foremost, I always say the joke. Again, fantastic team. We have a lot of work to be done, but it's been a long time since I've put fingers to keys on an SOP, right? Standard operating procedure for a customer. And I think within the first or second week, there was, hey, we need to get something out the door. Nobody else has a bandwidth to do it. Friday night, 7:00. All right, let's roll. Give it to me, right?
Yep.
Whereas before, there's you have countless opportunities. I think there's a lot of benefits, pros and cons as it relates to the process, right? I do feel like the over proceduralization sometimes in Big Four hampers you and ultimately makes you less cost competitive outside of a few very specific markets. Yeah. Whereas here, our ability to deliver in an agile manner is really completely day and night to that experience.
Quick thing on that, because don't feel too bad about yourself with the over process. Here's my perspective on this. So I'll go back to me and my kids always watch Survivor and stuff like that. Like, you have these people who never lived outside and stuff like that and never were in the rain, and then after 40 days, like, they could do anything, right? And so I kind of view it like that. Like, if you could get exposed to all that process and you're able to take that and then adapt it to what you really need, I think you have a huge leg up, with my little asterisk saying you have to be of the personality type that can roll with it, because some people, they can't, like, their circuits get overwhelmed because I don't understand. I've got this Gantt chart and this moved 3 days, so I got to shift it forward. And I'm like, whoa, like, do you want that? So we want to get this customer live. You don't want to piss them off with change orders in the SaaS world and stuff like that. So some people can flex up, because I'll also say that you are dealing with selling into larger organizations that will say, hey, listen, I'm guessing, total guess here, they're going to say, hey, before we sign up with you, we're going to have you talk with our PMO organization or something like that. And you need to be able to talk about that and show off examples. And the agile people can't really do that. So that's my thoughts on that whole thing. Like, you need that experience to be able to, have that foundation that you then craft to be able to take it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I won't say that I've found the balance exactly perfect yet. I think I probably am too much, and my team would probably agree. I sway too much one way towards, hey, we need to process the shit out of this, to back to, hey, let's just figure this out, get it over the finish line. But I will say every day we're getting a little bit closer to kind of an ambient level. But I do think that, here at Indeavor, where we were at a point where a little bit more of the process, the proceduralization was needed. And so now as we swing back towards kind of left to center here, we'll be in good shape. But to your point on the PMO, that's been my last 2 weeks with one of our largest customers is as we engage with the global implementation to hopefully hundreds of facilities. They want to see how this is the way that we do things. This is the way that you will be doing things. And then, we need to be able to have kind of very fluid and relevant conversations, back and forth with them as well. So couldn't agree more.
So on that note, are you at that point yet where you feel that you could say, like, here's our standard process, right? Like, we do these same 12, 15, 50, for me, they're usually in the 65 range, but like, this is our plan. This is how we do it. Here's the list of tasks that we always do. Every customer gets this, so we can start at least standardizing on this. And then maybe we 80-20 it through for our customers or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, and in fact, it's funny. We have a 2-hour happy hour session to make improvements on that standard process this afternoon, right?
Awesome.
So I would say we did. That was like, when I came in, I didn't come in with a playbook like that I expressed to everybody, but I had an internal playbook and an internal kind of structure that I was working towards. And to me, that was step one, is to be I should say step one was to learn the team, learn the environment, learn our customers, and learn what we do, our product, et cetera. But step two, and maybe it was 1B, was to define that structure. And I don't want to lose any credit to the great work that I had done before I joined. Mm-hmm. There was a solid structure in place. I just think we probably had a solid structure in place with about 20 of those variables, and now it's closer to that 50 to 60 task-based range, of which it's going to always improve. I always butcher this this comment or this quote from the CEO of MuleSoft that says, if a process or a procedure doesn't sound right, or a standard doesn't seem right, it's probably not, because it was probably made for when your organization was 40 people or 50 people, and now that for us we're 80 plus and growing as we roll, we would expect those. And so I think standardize or stabilize and improve is something I kind of learned back in my lean manufacturing days, and something that we have to take on here to the delivery process as well.
Oh, 100%. And I wound up seeing in some places you're going to have like 2 or 3 standard processes. Here's our small medium process. Here's our big ass customer process. Here's the absolutely. But you said it right, where you're just tweaking it and going along the way and making the changes and seeing what works.
Absolutely.
So, you did drop the fact that you're kind of in this pre-sales thing, and you're doing some work with like a prospect, which is awesome, because from my perspective is implementation needs to get in there versus you just got handed over a contract. And such. Where have you been able to successfully interject the implementation team into the pre-sales process so that a certain alarm goes off at a certain stage and you get called in, so the bad stuff doesn't happen?
Yeah. So to be fair, the process that we're at, actually, this is one of the wins for the year that maybe we'll get to here, but we've actually successfully completed the pre-sale process and getting ready to get going with the customer I had mentioned. So we're all incredibly excited about that, and some ramp up associated. As it relates to pre-sales, I'm heavily involved specifically, and in my team, who all of which are much smarter as it relates to workforce management, HCM environment, as well as our product, are also heavily involved. I think we have we have the right injection points. What we're working towards, and what we'll work towards a little bit deeper, is kind of structuring that process such that we get the right information. And as we become more mature, I think as a company, our injections will be maybe a little bit more considered in that process as well, if you will. So right now we're in this weird juxtaposition where we can provide value to all of our customers and with the configurability of our product. Now, how does that impact timelines? How does that impact performance, whatever it might be? That's where I think we have a little bit of opportunity to say, in this pre-sales process, let's consider this X, Y, and Z from a timeline cost perspective. But I think we're doing at the very least a good enough job right now, and we just have to grow those processes with our growth and our maturity as well. So I know that's a topic that both you and I have talked about, and you write about.
Well, as long as sales is on board, right? So sales is on board. Like, they don't think you're slowing the deal down by getting in. Like, they find you as a necessary piece.
I think they do, from the sense that right now, and this is the uniqueness of our product. It's actually our team right now, and it's actually a strong benefit. You know, we essentially play that sales engineer role, our implementation team in many cases. So they absolutely see us. Now, it's funny. There's a fine line, right? And it'd be interesting to see if any of the sales folks to listen to this. There's a fine line where it's, hey, we need you, and then it's okay, be gone, right? But as long as we keep pushing that line, this is where I go back to, as long as we keep pushing that line with kind of our maturity process, I'm comfortable with that. But the engagement is there right now.
I think if history serves me correct here, I think what will wind up happening is, and I've interviewed customers post-sales on these things.
Yeah.
They find that they were able to pair up with the implementation resource more than the salesperson, more than the sales engineer, because they're like, hey, you know, these people came in, they're non-commissioned. All they're doing is working with customers. They know the software better than anybody. They know the use cases. You know, like my standard, you know, vague, wide sweeping statement is, you know, sales and sales engineers, they know the 30 things in the grid that the product does, and you know, and your competitor does 28 of them, and you need 32 of them. So we're going to bring the implementation team, you know, and it gets to that point where they're going to ask, the customer is going to say, or the prospect is going to say, hey, can you bring Brad back in? And you might be like, oh, I need to bring Sally back in too, because she's my solution architect or whatever. But they're going to be like, yeah, because we just want to hear like the real stuff. Like, you get it. Like, we want to see how it happens. And then, and you know, apologies because I feel like I preach this so much, but it's the sales team's like, wow, they're helping close these deals. And then you might be able to, especially with like the formalization of the PMOs and stuff like that. Like, let's work this out in real time. What's the standard sales length? Like, is it a 6-month sale, a 9-month sale, a 3-month sale, like a average sale length?
Yeah, I would say closer to the 6-9 month sale. We're really focused on that enterprise, and sometimes longer than that. Yeah.
So here's the deal, and they might be rolling over from a different system, right?
Right.
So you get into these things where it's like, well, our other software ends. You know, we're going to not re-sign with our other vendor. That ends 12/31, because that's when everybody's systems end in this industry. And we need you to be up and running and going from there. But you would work that back. Like, well, if you want to remove from there, but you're saying it without the commission aspect. Like, so that means we need to be live and implemented and ready by, well, maybe before Thanksgiving or something like that. Right. So suddenly you're accelerating the deal to move forward, because if the sales team's like, oh, well, we've got 8 months to close this, and you're like, no, we actually got to kind of get, you know, in there now and start working on this. They're going to like, oh yeah, thanks so much for bringing that to our attention, instead of the worst case scenario for them, which is paying for both vendors. Because we know that occasionally happens when our things get delayed, and then that's all you hear is like, I'm paying for 2 systems right now, and you guys suck and all that stuff. So
absolutely.
I'm sure you never hear, but
and I would say we have, you know, our team here, we have some people that really are differentiators in that process. Their leverage, it's another balance, right? Because you know, sometimes you have to balance, like, okay, the ability for these key resources to actually deliver, and then to close. But I think we're really in a good place right now with it. Obviously, we all know, just like everything as we grow, it needs to be better. But I completely agree with you that non-commissioned and that real aspect of it. I mean, in our world, when we're talking, you know, at the employee level, the plant manager level, you know, people that understand and have worked in that for years, that's critical. And that's the type of people we have on my team.
That's great. We already went over your biggest win. So the other thing, I'm like, was there anything that you thought, hey, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to do X, and you just totally fell flat on your face on? I could talk about this all day, but so don't feel
you know, that was definitely the biggest win. I would say there's 2. Okay, so there's one fall flat on my face on, I would say, and it wasn't quite a fall flat on my face, but we're working through it. So, this is Brad coming in with his, very kind of structured background, and okay, we're going to implement OKRs, day one. And we've made some tremendous strides on operational engagement, I'll call, and structures within our team. It's primarily focused and driven by a remote working world in COVID. So, I joined essentially right at the inception of our office closing.
Yep.
We have a great, fantastic work environment. It's one of our differentiators as a customer here in Madison, Wisconsin, or as an employer here in Madison, Wisconsin, of which is a fantastic market for great talent. And, we really had to differentiate, okay, what we could have done by going to Sally's desk, using your example, versus now utilizing Slack and having 80 Slacks and notifications in the hour. So we made some good strides on the operational component of that, making people feel engaged. Where we really have to work towards is our OKR process. And in my mind, it was so simple, it was so easy. We had the structures, and then I came from actually interesting. I didn't notice from before, the world of coaching. Before I got involved in corporate life, I coached college football for a few years, and
I didn't realize
the saying there is, you have a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
Oh, right, exactly.
And that's how I would describe my OKR plan, and the nice pretty charts and review cadence that we had, not only from a way that we drive it, but also from what is a priority. Sometimes beginning of Q4 radically can change for some people by the first month of Q4. So that's somewhere that I'm really kind of putting some focus and some work on towards 21. So if anybody has any ideas, let me know. Maybe we'll talk about that.
I kind of back end them in as KPIs into the OKRs. I'm not thankfully managing right now, but well, that's not exactly true. But OKRs are tough to align when you're getting everything through. It makes sense to me, but in the practical sense, it's kind of also where you are as an organization when things shift and things like that. Having things for my team and being like, hey, you're here now, you need to get to here.
Yep.
I'm a little bit more like that, where it's you're trying to help them out with their career and the things that they need to do, and let's get out of the subjective manner into some more objective type of things like that. But I don't want to bore the crap out of people on those things. So we went over, the.
I'll give you one more opportunity.
Oh, sure.
That I had. So, because I do like to always, and again, I think with the team, and I like to personalize what we do. I'm a big believer in the idea of work-life integration. Is not as much on work-life balance, right? Because I do think like that. I'm doing this. I genuinely enjoy this. This makes me excited, and all that. The other, I'm not going to call it a fail, but the other opportunity I've had is, you talk about difference between, Big Four consulting and startup is the balance in a non-travel world from a work perspective. And so that's something, I'm absolutely still figuring out so I moved my wife, a pregnant wife with a 1.5-year-old from Indiana to Madison, Wisconsin. And we're still figuring out how do we kind of, how do I operate in such a way where, we're growing the shit out of what we're doing here, because that's not going to stop, but also make sure that I'm giving the right, effort, energy, and the right requirements at home. And what I've really learned throughout this, and this isn't a therapy session, but it's an important lesson for me, is, I am much better when that family side is in a good place, right? And there's been times where I've lost that balance in these first, 6-8 months that I've had to course correct, and it's been an incredible lesson for me as a new father, longtime husband, but new father. So that's another opportunity I have.
You have to keep it. I remember I did 2 hockey stick startup growths back to back over a 10-year period, and that started when I had just been married. Then we had kids, and I just remembered my second daughter being like, Dad, why are you angry all the time? Now, I wasn't angry all the time.
Right.
Focused face, like you're at the dinner table and you're thinking about your next meeting and all that stuff. and I was like, oh man. And then, yeah, it's a hard balance. So, and most people know these are, it's a tough gig. Like the whole services implementation, like it's real life. It's not the fun marketing and the fun sales, and they all have their hard components to it, but it's where the rubber meets the road, and it's a hard thing. So
absolutely.
No, that's a good, yeah. So my note to you, and I believe we touched this on one of our mentoring sessions where we just kind of shoot the shit, which is it's probably knowing what your organization looks like or what you're planning on. Just to give some thoughts that we had talked about, this is when you need to start building up the leadership of your functional areas, because you're not going to be able to do everything and manage over all these things and work 50, 60 hours a week. You might need somebody as a project management type leader, or a implementation lead type leader, or maybe even somebody focusing more on sales and more on X, Y, and Z. And bring those people along. You're starting to bring one of your more senior people in to just shadow on some of these sales calls, and then give them a little speaking thing. I'm like, hey, by the way, I can't make the next one. Can you jump in there? Oh yeah, sure. Little things like that. Because otherwise, I've lived this life for so long where the sales team, when they start recognizing the value that you bring, you are essentially now a salesperson, and managing people. And you've got 20 people or so, or I can't remember.
Yeah, closer to we're right between 25 and 30 right now. And
so you need to give your team attention and provide them leadership. And if you're doing all the sales work, and like, oh, you get the Slack note like, hey, what you doing right now? I'm on a call, and oh crap, I really need you to answer these questions. Like, you're gonna. So that's what I recommend to everybody at this point in time. Otherwise, your team's going to feel like they're not getting talked to, or I know you're a good, solid, upstanding citizen. So you're going to try and spread yourself so thin so you can make sure your employees feel like they're heard and everything. And so that's when you need to start kind of breaking it up into these component teams.
Yeah, and it's a great topic, because we've talked about it in the past, and actually just this week, I've announced kind of some formalities and put people in different positions where they can provide that increased level of oversight and focusing on two things. And first and foremost, it's kind of a better employee experience here for us at Indeavor, because again, we really focus on that being a differentiator for us when we go to market. But then the second piece is also focusing on customer quality. And I think now, so we've established what I'll call kind of like a functional head leadership team that kind of structures everything from our architecture team, some of our kind of core business analysis and delivery, as well as some leadership around program and project management. And my team now, it seems very, very unique, but my direct reports is now 5, and it's interesting how different that feels than even just like 2 or 3 days in, right? Than the first few. And I'll tell you, the people need it, because they, when I am spending time, it's like, it's more about specific tasks or other items than kind of the focus that's required. So yeah, completely agree. And
sometimes it's also like, hey, listen, if you just want to vent, you can just vent. And then you're like, 10 minutes later, and then you're like, do you need me to take action on any of these things? They're like, no, exactly. Just need to vent. Like, totally good. Cause it literally, one of the things about being, a boss or a manager is that you turn into an armchair psychiatrist, where people just kind of need, you find out about everybody's, when they're pregnant, even before they can announce it, like you find out all this stuff and everything.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot to manage. So it's good that you're starting to do that. So let's do this. I know we can talk for hours, so we're going to do this as part 1, but so if I was in pre-sales, if I'm the customer prospect, and Brett, how long does it usually take you to launch a customer? Do you have a standard answer that you can say right now?
Yeah, standard answer is about 16 weeks. We plan for around 16 weeks, and we try to drive that down. It will vary. The follow-up answer to that is it varies based on what does your application ecosystem look like? What's the size of your facility? What's the complexity? But we really drive the 12 kind of 16-week stand up, and we're really focusing on kind of how do we optimize that, both from a customer experience as well as a a delivery perspective as well.
So that seems fast to me. Are you doing integrations, or that would add to the 16 weeks?
So we can do, depending on the ecosystem that we're integrating with, we can do integrations within that 16 weeks. Here's the big cusp, right? So I didn't give you the but. The but is the but is, we need some significant employee engagement, or I'm sorry, customer engagement throughout that 16-week life cycle. And that's really where kind of the cusp of that conversation comes. But if we're doing complex integrations where we're actually having to do some development and some pure design, which in many cases, this is what we do, right? We have we're, as a point solution, we integrate with several key systems. We have experience integrating with those key systems. What really derails sometimes that timeline is some of the specific work rules associated with those. Yep. But no, our target is 16, and I'm telling you, we can generally provide value by no short effort on either end.
Yeah.
Within those 16 weeks, and then
that's awesome.
When I say 16 weeks, I really look at that kind of to kind of a go live state. We'll always have some kind of hypercare and some additional support required after that, but
sure.
That's the goal. Our biggest, I would say, there's three kind of main contributors to timeline shifts. One is, what does your integration landscape look like, and what are the complexity of that? Sometimes we won't know that until we get into some kind of work rules. Mm-hmm. Second is employee engagement or customer engagement. So how much time can we get with the experts?
On that note, are you charging them? Are you charging your customer for implementation?
Yes.
You can just no. You don't have to tell me the cost, but yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's one way. I was just talking about this previously. So it's like,
yes,
that, if you're saying 16 weeks, we turn into pumpkins, then
yes,
suddenly you've got a lot more access to these people. So.
We are charging them, but I'll be very open, and I'm a firm believer of this, because I'm in this for the long haul here at Indeavor. We are my goal and our goal is to get people on our product, right? We're not a services organization. We are a product company that provides value through our product. And then the third piece there is the cleanliness of data. I'll call it on the
ETL, just the thing that can grind success to a halt is
absolutely,
because everybody's got clean data, right? So
yes, and we're taking some of our enterprise customers are really taking kind of a different approach on how we manage that, in terms of getting some pure kind of upfront engagement and defining that into our timeline, such that yes, we're 16 weeks of engagement, or 4 to 5 months of pure engagement, but here's the upfront work, and here's what we would expect, et cetera, et cetera, before full engagement. But when I say, people, resources in the facility and engaging with customers prior to kind of the hypercare, we really kind of try to focus on that 16 weeks. And then obviously, very often we have both outliers on either end. So.
Yep. Let's see here. Let's see if there's a nice breaking off point here. So we talked about the pre-sales. So now, I actually know the answer to this one, but so now as you're heading into, we're recording this middle of November. So prepping for end of year and then beginning of 2021. What's your big focus right now?
Two big focuses. One, I won't spend as much time on, because it's just part of who we are and what we do, but it's improving the shit out of our processes in a remote world. What I think, what we've learned, and I would imagine others have learned, is, the ability to go into a customer setting and have that engagement with them in person is just flat out easier. And when you have to do that through scheduled meetings, and when you have to do that in defined time windows, and you have to do that without offering to take them for a beer or dinner afterwards.
Yeah, it gets a little harder.
It gets a little harder, right? And exposes the way you deliver. So really focusing on that. The second piece, and really, the most important piece that my focus is on, with the help of a lot of the team, is finding really great people that are interested in growth and interested in what we're doing, not only in Madison, Wisconsin, but distributed across the U.S. as well as globally. And we're going to have some hubs opening up here in in different regions of the world as well as we grow. But the key there, Jeff, is people interested in growth and in, you know, that has this. I don't want not 100 people that kind of like have that same weirdness that I have around it, but just people that understand, hey, this is where we're at, this is what where we want to be, and this is what it means. And that what it means, I think, is the really critical component. Because to say, hey, I want to work for a growth company, that's one thing, but to be in it, going back to the top of our discussion here, but to actually be in it, completely different. So how do we find those people? How do we get them up to speed? How do we have them providing value really, really quickly? And how do we do it over and over and over again in different corners of the world? That is my focus. That's our focus, and exciting as hell.
No, that's awesome. Almost a good place to drop off here, but I did want to ask one or two questions because it's been on my mind from my previous conversation.
Yeah.
What are, especially now with COVID and everything, and we can just do this in a short thing, what are the tools are you using as a team to work with your customers? Is it like a Google Drive thing? Is it, we talking smart sheets? You know?
Yeah, we primarily, our main customer interaction point is smart sheets outside of the standard communication tools. So most of our customers will on day one be engaging with smart sheets from an account perspective, and from there we can track, you know, project plan, customer expectations, open issues. We're you know, converting and have converted to utilizing it for our scorecards. And so as much as we can use in that collaborative environment, the better. There's other tools out there. I'm not going to be this isn't an ad for smart sheets. But we've found success with it. It's a tool that I adopted once I joined here, and I think it's certainly you know, beneficial.
No, you use the best one, that you use the tool that makes the job. Like, you know, if you only need 10 things to be done, you know, that's a quick spreadsheet, right? But if you've got all these interdependencies and things like that, and you can't do number 15 unless number 7's done, like, 100%. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we use you know, so internally, obviously is separate, but externally, we've really been kind of learning and finding a value in Teams as a collaboration tool, you know, both internally and externally.
There's a lot of people using it now. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well, awesome. So let's do this. And there's so much to talk about. We'll definitely do a part 2 in a few weeks or months. But what I have, so I initially started this off as a music conversation where I was like, hey, what do you listen to these days? Because the service that I use allows you to pull music in, and you know, I'm a big music fan. However, it turned into a huge thing. I don't want to get into so I'm switching it now into, and I know you've got little kids, but what has your COVID hobby been these days?
Man,
I'm just assuming you're baking bread and.
So I would say 2 things. I have tried to pick up more reading. So trying to pick up some more books. I've kind of like.
They can't be all process books, Brad. They can't be like, change management.
No, definitely not. I've weirdly gotten into some stoic writing around kind of
Ryan
like what the
Ryan Holiday by chance?
Yeah, Ryan Holiday.
I've got that one a day thing is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it's just every day. It's like, oh, it's May 5th. You should, it's great.
Yeah, so you can read it, and then you have a 3-minute blurb. But then even some of kind of like the classics around Stoicism, I think really just apply. Have been fun, but then also just like, you know, stupid books, right? I'm trying to engage. I have a couple brothers. We're reading some books together, and
that's awesome.
But then I really, any time that I'm not working, and I'm not, and I say reading, I'm giving myself way too much credit. I really am trying to spend more time with the toddler and the baby. So I have a 2-year-old soon, and then I have a 8-week-old. So as much time as I can spend with them, especially when the phone's away, is really what I do. And honestly, what that looks like, and the simplicity of this is the most beautiful thing, right? There's a hill that's maybe a block away from my house that I can take my toddler to. And he can run up and down that hill, I'm telling you, for like a half hour to an hour and come home, take a nap. I mean, it's like that's the type of stuff that really COVID has been for us.
I'm going to be honest with you, like, because I had kids with that same age spread, the 2 and the toddler thing, and that's a tough, don't do it. No. But in paying attention to that 2-year-old, it means so much to them. Because otherwise, you know, then you start that, you know, the day that the baby was born was the worst day of the toddler's life and all that stuff if you don't do that stuff. So, well, that's amazing. So, such a a good character, Brad. I appreciate you, and I appreciate our interactions and coming on and doing this here. So hold on one quick second. I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to get some details to put into the post and everything for you. And anybody that's listening, we'll talk to Brad again shortly. So here we go. Let me just hold on one second.
Thanks, Jeff.